How did that happen out of curiosity? Like, what did that look like for anybody who's listening and wondering, hey, I want to get involved in sublease? Do I stay within one brand? Do I spread myself out and try out different opportunities based off of maybe a couple Target, a couple Lens Crafters, a couple Walmart?
I think before that question, what's more important is it worth it? So when one of the things that
Okay.
we tell students when we're like, and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys have so many locations and things like that. I always remind them 95% of us have one location. Let's say in the corporate optometry world, right? Like 90% at least, if not higher. That is more the norm. You can run in a very successful, amazing business. You're the main doctor. You're the one running your business. Even if you take yourself out and put a doctor in and you're still running and overseeing one practice because it does so well on its own. So I always try to remind them that that is actually the goal. The goal is to have one successful practice. Adding on, that's something different. Wanting to build an empire of different, that's cool and that's doable. And absolutely you can strive for that in the future. But that shouldn't be the first goal because having more doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, at the end of the day, more money. It doesn't necessarily always mean that or not by much more at all. For some people it does, but not for everyone. Part of it for some people is more of just being able to do something more in the industry and be really involved, but it's not necessarily about that because you can be super successful with one private, one corporate location, for instance. So that's always like my first thing I say to students when they ask me, because I'm like, this is not the norm. Like right now you have a panel of four of us and we all have 4+ locations. That's really cool. And that's awesome. And pick our brains about what you want to, but just know that that's not what you're going to find out there usually with corporate doctors, for instance. It's usually one location and you're just killing it and you're doing a really great job at building your business. So I think like that's really important first. And then you just have to decide if it makes sense to grow. So being part of like Luxottica, you're going to be offered first because you've grown a business and you have partnerships with leadership, and regional managers and so forth. So if you show an interest, that's how you start to grow with several locations if that's what you want. But I think that's like always been really important that I always like tell students too. I'm like, or doctors, some of our associate doctors we've actually had more locations that we've given or sold over to some of our associate doctors. We've actually let some go and let other doctors that we trained for several years have that opportunity. And they're still all single lease holders. Like they all have one location, all of our doctors that did that, and they're doing great and they're super happy. And that was the goal for them. We taught them how to be a successful business owner and have an optometry practice within their location. And that's their life right now. And they have zero ambition to want to grow. So that's okay because
I
I've
don't I
actually
don't think I don't think that's necessarily ambition, right? So I
not in a
think
bad way.
yeah. So I want to be very clear on this because we talk to students a lot about this, and I consult doctors when they're because we've had several doctors that have come to us and they're like, hey, we want to do what you want to do. We want to rinse and repeat and copy and paste, and this is from across the U.S., right? Different doctors in different places. My thing is always there is a significant price to pay when you multiply yourself, because every time you multiply yourself you give a piece of yourself away from the other aspects of your life that you want to focus on. So, and I say this as a mom of two, as a married person, as a primary caretaker of my family, like my parents. Shannon is the same. We have different responsibilities, and every time we do that, we take away a piece of that away. And you know this, Ryan, too, as a father, and you have multiple locations. There is a price to pay to that devil when you do want to grow. And there's also financially, like she said, it doesn't always mean it's great. So the most amount of money, surprisingly, that I made in my entire career, the most amount of money, like dollar amounts in my bank account, and I'm going to be pretty honest here, was when I had one location, because I was working myself and I had total control of the money coming into the office. And guess what? I didn't have a chief operating officer. I didn't have a financial officer. I didn't have, right now, to run this enterprise, I have at least 5 people with salaries that are doing everything else, right? So when I was the one location, I was it all. So all that money was coming into the bank. So I think that's the part that a lot of people don't see, because they're like, oh my God, we see all these locations, but you really don't see the operational costs of these locations. You really don't see the amount of time and the amount of money that gets put out to run these organizations, when you actually look at it and you're like, wait a minute, if you're just in that one location, you might actually be smarter.